You're listening to Business Marketing Show episode number 11. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com or on iTunes. Hi everyone, this is Ed K. Smith from Online Impact and the Business Marketing Show. And with me, I have my good friend and co-host, Brendan Tully. How are you, Brendan?
I'm good, Ed. How about yourself?
Very good. Thank you, sir. We're very excited today to talk about websites that are compatible and work on mobile devices. So mobile websites, or probably, what would you call it, Brendan? What would be the best terminology?
Ooh, I don't know, mobile websites?
Mobile websites?
Yeah, mobile websites, I guess.
Yep, responsive websites would be another terminology that gets used a lot. So basically, we're going to talk about websites that display properly on things like your iPhone or Android or any type of smartphone so that it is easy for the visitor to use. I always sort of have a rule that if you can navigate a website on a smartphone with just your thumb, you've done well. Because typically a lot of websites these days, they're not set up to display differently on a smartphone, and they still look like the same format and layout as you would see on a large screen. So that means you've got to pinch and squeeze and double tap and do all sorts of things to get into the area that you want to see, and it gets very, very tricky, and you've definitely got to use two hands to do it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. A lot of businesses don't have their websites set up for that. It is sort of a default thing we do when we design sites for clients, probably over the last couple of years, making sure that they are mobile friendly. So, Brendan, what are things that you see these days, and what should we pay attention to for people getting into setting up a new site?
Okay, so we've established mobile websites are the version of the website that displays on a mobile device. So I guess mobile devices can be split into two categories, smartphones and tablet PCs like iPads. So I guess there's some considerations here that many tablets, let's talk about some common mistakes. So the first I see is the website just simply doesn't work on a mobile device. It's an old website, or it has elements that, it's a standard website, but there are things that are broken on there that just don't work on, my iPhone, my iPad, whatever smartphone device it is. So I would say that before going any further into this, if you're listening, you should probably whip out your phone or your iPad and have a look at your own website and see what it looks like on that device. And it should look pretty much like a minimized version of the big site, right?
Yeah, yep.
So I guess that would be step one. And often there's a technology called Flash, Adobe Flash, which doesn't actually work on most mobile devices. So that's usually the most common reason why the website isn't working, is because back in the day, 10 years ago, in the mid-2000s, a lot of websites were built purely out of Flash. So if that's the case with your site, it won't display it all on a mobile device. And often banners and other moving elements were built using this Flash file format, so those won't work either. So that would be the first thing I would check to see if your website is working on a mobile device right now. If not, then it's probably something to look at. If there's just banners and moving elements that are built in Flash, they can be rebuilt in another file format that is mobile device compatible, so it's usually a pretty quick and easy win. And I guess getting further into this conversation, typically mobile-specific websites are split into two different types, like the responsive type that you've already mentioned, Ed, and
yep.
Then there's a completely separate smartphone-specific version of the website, which is completely different to the regular website.
Yes, completely different. So it can sense whether you're on a normal computer-sized screen or whether you're on a smartphone, and it will display accordingly to that.
Yeah, so I would say if you're building a new site from scratch, there's probably some considerations there to go into whether you need a responsive design at all, or whether you need a mobile-specific website. I was having a chat with a client maybe a week or so ago, And basically, I broke the decision down into two parts. So if your business relies on, if the behavior of customers who visit your website is different on a mobile device to a PC, then you need some sort of mobile website, because the design of the site and the build of the site has got to match the customer intention. So in this example, it was a plumbing business. So people who look for plumbers on their PC are typically not in such a hurry. They're not in a rush, whereas people who are searching for plumbers on a smartphone are probably time poor. They're probably on the road and need a quick solution. So the design and the text and everything else needs to meet that kind of quick answer to the problem. Does that make sense?
Well, they've got their head stuck under a sink with water gushing out on them.
Yeah, exactly.
They have an emergency.
My answer was that, okay, in this case, the responsive design isn't good enough, because the responsive design is basically a shrunk down design of the normal website, whereas the mobile design is a completely different design, built totally. It's a completely separate website that only shows on a mobile device. So in this case, the mobile website was better for them because we could completely customize it for that different customer intention. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And technically we would call that an adaptive design. Really, if we want to separate the two, we've got adaptive design and responsive design. So adaptive is the one that will show a different version. It'll adapt to the different screens. And responsive design is different again, because it allows you to reach a different type of audience. So so there's two different things. They sort of cross over, but they're important to get the distinction.
Yep. Hey, so what's your take on? So I do a lot of browsing on my iPad, and I go to a lot of websites, and the mobile site displays for me on the iPad. What are your thoughts and feelings about that?
Well, I tend to see, when I go to websites, that I'm really just seeing the same sort of version on my iPad that I would if I was on my Mac or laptop or whatever. So, and I don't have a problem with that. It doesn't look that different to how it would on a normal computer, because the screen size, I think, is big enough to deal with the layout of a standard website. So that doesn't worry me, but it's when I'm on my mobile phone, that's when it really pisses me off, because it's like, it's really difficult. So, as I said before, if I can't navigate just holding my iPhone in my hand and going up and down with my thumb and hitting the navigation points that I want to, I mean, obviously when it gets to the point where I've got to type in information and I've got to I can still use my thumb, I suppose, but so I prefer to have it so that it's adaptive, definitely with my iPhone. But my iPad, I really don't care.
Yeah,
because the screen's big enough. But some people with other types of tablets that have slightly smaller screens, it may be important to be adaptive to those. Yeah.
For me, my iPad browsing behavior is very similar to my PC behavior. So I'd prefer the normal full website to display on the iPad. It really shits me when I go to a website on an iPad and the smartphone version of the website displays. I don't think that's a good idea at all. And it's a bad experience.
Yeah.
It's, back when mobile websites first came out, that was very common. It's not so much these days, but if that mobile site was built a few years ago, it's probably something else to check out as well, because on my iPad, I just want the normal website experience most of the time.
Yeah, because you've got the real estate space on there to do it. So maybe slightly different if you're on an iPad mini or something, but the standard size iPad with the 9-inch screen is fine. So.
Yeah. So really, that the customer intention or the visitor intention to the website is really important to keep in mind when we're talking about this stuff. So I think particularly where the business is a B2C business, so they're selling to consumers, or they're a retail business, and where they're very much a problem solution type business, and it's a short sales cycle or short decision time, it's really important to get the mobile stuff right, because people are on their phone, they want a quick answer, they want to read the information, they want it really easy to use and really easy to call you or book online or whatever it is.
Yeah. And look, it's not an expensive thing to get done. In most cases, if you're using WordPress as your platform for building out a site, pretty much most of the decent new WordPress themes or templates are automatically adaptive and responsive. They already have that built in. If they don't, There are plugins you can use to do that are relatively inexpensive. Might cost you $100 to use, or your web designer will just do it. But it's not an expensive thing typically to get done. If you have a website that doesn't have that built in, and then you have to get it added on top of, and it's not WordPress, sometimes that could be a bit more expensive. And just be wary of when you're talking with your web designers on getting ridiculous prices for getting it sort of done. It might be cheaper to go to a completely new site. So
yeah, we had one we did recently. We converted them across, so they were on a CMS. They had no control over a lot of stuff, so we converted them across to WordPress. And as part of that, we converted it to a responsive design. So we actually had to change a bit of the layout to make that work. So they had the banner, they had like a bannery thing on the homepage, and we had to make that a bit wider and just change the order of a few things to make that responsive design work. But it was, I think in terms of cost, it was to add the responsiveness in as part of the job. I think it was only an extra $500 on top of the conversion job. So it wasn't a big deal. And it just looked a whole lot better as well, because without the responsiveness, it kind of felt a bit clunky on a mobile device. So.
Yeah, because let's face it, and we've said this, I'm sure, in past episodes, that if you're paying any sort of attention to your Google Analytics data or your web data with whatever you're using, and you're seeing the types of devices that people are using to access your website, so whether they're looking at it on a normal screen or on a mobile or a tablet, if it's anything like pretty much most of our clients that we work with, the typical average is somewhere between 25 to 50% and growing are using smartphones or mobile devices to access the customers' websites. So you really have to cater for this sort of stuff now. Otherwise, you're going to get people who they'll end up on your website on their smartphone. It's too hard. They'll just go back and they'll go to another site, and you'll lose them. It's really not this is a thing you should maybe possibly think about doing. This is really a must-have in this day and age.
Yeah, I think so. So I don't really have any more thoughts there, Ed. So what do we got?
Are we thoughtless? Are we thoughtless people?
I don't know. Check your own website on a mobile device, on a smartphone and a tablet. Make sure that at a minimum it loads up and everything displays properly, and that's not, the design doesn't break because it has non-mobile compatible stuff.
Yep.
What else? Probably the speed on a mobile device as well is a good one to check, because if people who are on a mobile device are going to be on a slower internet connection potentially because they're on 3G or whatever, so that's probably an important one to keep in mind. And then we talked about adaptive versus responsive. And probably another thing that rolls into that is, the purpose of the website. What are you trying to give to the visitor, and what is their intention? So we'll have a couple of screenshot examples in the show notes, but, something like people on the mobile device trying to find them on Google Maps or find the phone number or book online or get that quick answer. So I'd say anything else you can think of that should be on that mobile site?
No, just making sure that, say, it's if it's definitely going to be something that people are looking at on a smartphone as opposed to a tablet, make it as easy to use with one finger as possible. That's just me, though. Maybe others will disagree, but that's how I do it. And I look, from what I watch, I pay a lot of attention to how people are using their phones when I'm just standing around. And it's always it's an interesting thing these days when you're anywhere, whether you're at a doctor's surgery, at an airport, at a cafe, the amount of heads that are down looking at a mobile device is just probably, I would say 90% would probably be not unreasonable to say. Unless they're actually sitting there having a conversation with another human. Whew, fancy that. But yeah, so people have, they're using these things everywhere, and you've really got to get on top of it. So if it's not in your thought process now, and your web designers haven't brought this to your attention, first of all, get a new web designer. We're happy to talk to you. And nextly, maybe after... Nextly. That's a new word I made up. Look it up. It's going to be as popular as the word podcast soon. Nextly. Actually, that could be a good website. So I'm going to have to go and check and see if that's registered. Nextly.com. I bet you it is. I'm going to look right now, folks. I'm looking. I'm opening up. And Brendan's laughing at me, but you watch. It'll be registered. Nextly. L-Y. search Nextly. You watch, someone will have it. Yes! .com, .net, .de. See, I'm not the first silly person to say the word Nextly. You got to love the internet. All right. Well, thank you, Brendan. That was a slightly shorter podcast than we normally do, but we'll talk for as long as we need to. Sometimes we just dribble on forever, but this one was much more precise. So, any questions? Feel free to contact us in the below the podcast, and we will certainly respond if we feel like it. Of course we will. Thanks, Brendan. Have a good week. And
catch you next time.
Where are we? What planet is this? All right. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Bye. You've been listening to Business Marketing Show. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com or on iTunes. Just look for Business Marketing Show.